What's up, wrestling fans, trading card collectors? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Cards. Today we've got Matt Dalakas on the show for an interview. You've probably seen Matt either floating around on Twitter or he was on an episode in the archives of the Worlds Collide podcast, which you should definitely check out that if you want some more wrestling card podcasts for your ears. He's a valued member of the community, and we're going to talk a lot about community and collecting today. We talk about his PC, how he's collecting, how he's adapting in this new ultra-modern world of wrestling cards. And we talk about a disagreement that was mostly probably on my part that we went back and forth with on Twitter. And I was like, if you're going to come on the show and talk about this, let's just discuss our approaches and opinions on this thing that I've brought up and talked about numerous times. You'll see what we're talking about in this interview. But he also shares some interesting stories that what the cards mean to him and why he collects certain things. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into this conversation with Matt Dalakas. What's up, everybody? We've got Matt Dalakas. You may have seen him on the Worlds Collide podcast on one roundtable we did. You may have seen him all over the place on Twitter. Very valuable member of the community. However, he's not got an entire episode dedicated to him to get all this stuff out of the way. We got a lot to talk about. So, Matt, welcome. Finally get you on here.
Glad to be on here. Look forward to this big time.
Yeah, you've been on the list, honestly, for a while. I didn't tell you this beforehand, but you know how it is. Like, just people's schedules and these lists that I have built out of people I want to get on the show, it takes time. And, again, schedules. We just got out of the holidays. That was hard to book people around. Right. So, I'm going to lay out just for a second. We have not got your origin story. So let's hear about how you got into collecting, whether it's cards, figures, whatever it is, and then how that has transitioned into wrestling cards.
So I'm 44 years old. So I grew up during, I say the golden age of wrestling.
It is.
Always been a collector. I got to go to like Richfield Coliseum and see Hulk Hogan and hold a sign up and 85 tops. I got packs as a kid. So I've collected baseball, football, wrestling when I was little. Sort of got out of it a little bit. I've always bought packs or done things. My stepfather, who was a huge wrestling fan, we still always talked wrestling, and he was a card collector too. He had passed, and I sort of started watching old matches, just thinking of good times with him and things that would make him happy. And then I started to watch, this is sort of weird how it gatewayed into it, but I'd watch the like Zach Ryder, the Major Wrestling Figure podcast. Mm-hmm. I bought all my old LJNs that I had as a kid. And I was like, well, I'm not really a figure collector. I'm a card collector. So then I just went all in on the cards I used to have. And what started it off buying cards was actually the Leaf Ultimates set. My buddy and I at work just started buying them like crazy because you got an autograph of the stars, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan. Once that started, it was just like a cannon. I mean, it was awesome. And to this day, I still buy all the time. I love, I look at the cards often, and the wrestling community is, I think it's the best collecting community there is.
So were you you said you've been a card collector. Were you collecting cards growing up also, like more than the figures, even as a kid?
Yes, to me, I'm a big nostalgia guy. I still have my original bike. I bought
cool.
I still have that in a display room. And then I bought my dream bike a couple of weeks ago and put it next to it just because, I used to ride that bike to the card shop, and it sort of all ties in together.
I talk about that all the time. Like sometimes these cards aren't about the money. Sometimes, the action figures, whatever it is, not about the money. It's about the connection and the nostalgia and what it means.
You hit it right on. One of my favorite things to do is if I bring up a card or a bike, or it brings someone a memory they haven't maybe thought of in a while, and then it sort of sparks them to be like, wow, I used to collect this, or I used to do this.
Yeah.
It's wild. It spreads pretty quickly. So I always have been a baseball, football card collector. Had the figures I do remember having as a kid though, because I loved the Road Warriors, and I had the Remco figures.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I had those, the LJN, the big tall Hulk Hogan. I remember taking it to school for show and tell. And so that was always fun when you're a kid. But I think when you get older, I don't display my figures too much. I probably have 20, 25 figures just because I picked up some.
Takes up a lot of space too.
A lot of space. So then when I got into the cards, you look at it and you say, wow, I remember this, or, and I think, and not just myself, but everyone in the wrestling card community is very passionate.
Oh yeah.
And it's just great to see. It's just great to see. I
So
actually,
go ahead.
sounds funny, but Macho Man was my favorite of all time. And when I got and you're a big fan of this card too, but the action-packed autograph.
Mm-hmm.
For me,
Yep.
I was actually like emotional when I got this card. I really was, because I
Do
was
you
like,
think am I going out on a limb here? And you can feel free to disagree with me. Do you think this is one of the most important Macho Man cards ever?
I think between that and his 85 O-Pee-Chee, two of the most, I think they're very disrespected. And now I don't sell lots of cards. I collect, I hold them. That action pack card to me is so important, being a first autograph with the Undertaker. And plus, he doesn't have many signatures.
Yeah.
It just is slept on. I just
Well,
think it's
and I've
so
talked
much
about it
fun.
before. I think that card is like if there was a wrestling dictionary in history of time and you look up Macho Man, that image and of that time period sums up
Right.
like what you think of when you think of Macho Man.
It's him. It's the perfect card. It's, you know, to just know he signed this in the 1998 or 99 WCW
Mm-hmm.
card, which I don't have that one. I will eventually get. This one though means a lot to me. Like, that's a forever card. And when I remember opening it that day and going, wow, this is like, oh,
Yep.
he touched this card. It's amazing.
I did the same thing when I got mine. Like I didn't care about the condition. I probably didn't have the same. Like I'm not as big of a Macho Man fan as you or some others. It was more of like this seems like a staple that should be in anyone's collection. I do like Macho Man. I grew up with him. Always been a fan. Like I got to have this card. And then when I got it, I was kind of like you. I'm like, man, like there's a crease here. The marker's a little streaky, but this is a very important card for the hobby. And
Right.
I want to touch back on Leaf for a minute. What is it, the superstars and the autographs and the price point that got you into those? Because I know there's kind of a dividing line with just
Yes.
Leaf and the hobby in general. There are certain cards that I think they knock it out of the park with. There are others that I'm just like, they're just okay. And then like personally, I've slowly started getting, and it's just a personal preference, sticker autos. I understand why they have to do them, but the sticker actually ruins some of the cards, like in the most recent AEW release, some of the
Oh yeah.
Prism stuff, and any of these
Yes.
autographs that are stickers, I'm not as big of a fan of. But there's some of this Leaf stuff that is just very, very cool. So I'll just lay out for a minute and let you talk about your love for the Leaf cards.
So I wouldn't say I like love the Leaf cards now, but for the gateway back into buying packs, I just thought it was the coolest thing for the price point, to get Hulk Hogan's autograph. This is, I think when you get back into a collecting, you sort of start doing your research, you start learning. I didn't jump right into, 85 Tops autograph for
Yeah.
this. I just sort of wanted to get my feet wet. And they just had it. It just became, the Four Horsemen. I got all of them. I got Ric Flair. I got like Kamala. That was right around when he had passed. And you were just getting all these legends that you grew up with. I thought they were nice artwork on these. I do
Yeah.
think sticker autos, I am not a fan of. I think on card, especially with a Posca pen, I've seen a lot of yours,
Hmm.
are a lot better. But there was just something about them. And I was getting them so cheap because it was right when people just wanted to offload them because they were buying the boxes with like 5 or 6 cards in it.
Hmm.
And it wasn't really for future selling. It was just to have the autograph. And then as
Right.
you get more into it, you realize, well, these are cool. They're a nice placeholder to bigger and better things. But
Well, and
without these, it wouldn't.
maybe it is a gateway. If you're going to upgrade what you have, that's a gateway for someone else to have that same experience that you did. And I'm with you
Exactly.
on the card art. I'm one of the few people that like loves that hand drawn or the painted or whatever, however they did it. I love that stuff. A lot of people hate it. They're like, well, strike one, sticker auto. Strike two,
Mhm.
it's not an actual picture. But wrestling is an art form to some people. I think this is a cool art form with cards. Some people say cards are art. So I love them.
Yeah. And with wrestling cards, there's so many different, there's so many different cards. You could, like, there's art cards. There's, I see now they have blood drip cards that they're releasing.
Yep.
That's the cool thing about it. And you could go down 1,000 niches if you want to. So
Hmm.
it definitely was a good start. They'll always be near and dear to my heart for that. I wouldn't say I'd go into Leaf again if it came out, depending on what they look like. But like, this card is a Hogan 1 of 5. I mean, that's pretty cool to get for, I think I got it for like $60 at the time. That's amazing.
You can't even have him sign anything for that.
No, it's crazy.
So you started that, was kind of getting back in. Let's talk about your PC and how that's kind of evolved from starting with Leaf, maybe some kind of transition stuff, and then what you're currently doing now. Because I think I think if I was to say what type of collector you are, maybe you're like a Legends and Vintage guy. I could be wrong on that, but I feel like on Twitter, you haven't really just come out and said stuff like this. So floor's yours to talk about your collection.
So I went through the vintage after the Ultimates. I went and did all the Hogans. I was the 85 top set. I was buying them all up, O-Pee-Chee, the stickers, and I was just gobbling those up, putting them away because I was like, you know what, they're cool. A lot of people my age remember that, ripping those packs. Then you start going, well, maybe I need this, maybe I need that. Then I sort of went down, I know you collect them like the ECW cards. I thought those are so cool. So if I would say my PC, I did get a lot of the old Macho Mans, but I don't go into the new stuff now. There's like 50 variants. I don't do that. Hogan, the important cards, of course, I get all for instance, one of my favorite cards, which this will be funny because this sort of started our conversation a couple months ago, but the Ultimate Warrior rookie card to me, and I know rookie.
Call it whatever you want. There's no discrimination on this show.
Yeah, I love this card, and it doesn't need to be graded. It doesn't need to be, but as long as I have it, I like having it. I do send in some things, but as long as it's in my collection, I could look at it and I'm like, that's cool. It doesn't, to me, it's the value to myself, not really what it's going to sell for. So that, and then the one thing I think I'm known for would be the Limitless set, the 2018, which I got to thank Cardboard Picker Tony O just sent me my last 3 to complete Series 4. So I'm a completist again from Series 1 through 4. If I would say that the most fun I've had in the hobby, besides talking to the people that collect cards, it was getting those cards, which we talked about before.
On the round table.
On the other round table. That to me I feel like that was my pinnacle of anything. And I love those cards just because they were so hard to get in, like the MJF, which for an independent card, it's the top one. But that was a big feat for me. And I just, that sort of, after that, I've sort of slowed down and I buy stuff here and there, but I went in so heavy one year. I got pretty much everything I really wanted.
Man, so much to kind of unpack and talk about there. First thing I want to talk about is, if it's very rare to see somebody that is collecting a certain segment, whatever that segment is. And all of a sudden they say the pinnacle of their collecting is something completely opposite of that.
Right.
And that's something that I honestly think, as later on we'll talk about the community. I think it's something that the wrestling card community has kind of struggled with. And that's like, you collect something and all of a sudden you become identifiable as that. And it's like, well, I can't branch out or like anything else because this is what I do. And I, like I like Cross, but also the All-Stars are my favorite set. Like you said earlier, I collect the ECW stuff, trying to get that signed and put that set together. So I guess just talk about the process of, going really hard at Macho Man or Vintage or whatever it is. And all of a sudden, Limitless. And that becomes like your favorite thing.
So the Vintage is, to me, one thing. If someone looked at my collection, I think it has a little bit for every. I mean, there's a little bit of everything in there. I do have some modern. I have a lot of independent, which is fun. I love the independent. The Vintage, like the Hogan you got to have the Hogan All-Star. I sub that. To me, that's, you have that. It's like having, as they say, the Babe Ruth.
Everything else is like icing on the cake.
Right. That's it. That's the pinnacle. But I think you get to a point where you get autographs, you get your older cards, you start getting sets and doing this. And then the chase, I think the chase is, once that gets fired up, I mean, I'm in it. When I used to see these cards and I couldn't have them and didn't know about them, it just created a monster of getting independent cards. And then one thing that did help was I started getting into independent wrestling. And once AEW sort of started and these guys were coming out wrestling, it was sort of fun to be like, wow, it was almost like getting a minor league baseball player that made it. and was in like the main set, and you're like, wow, I knew about this guy before other people did, and it was mainstream.
Right.
So that's one thing that I really enjoyed too, is just having something that not everybody has.
And that's a big shift that, let's talk about this. A big shift in the collecting community that I've seen, and it mainly has been with modern, but there's a little bit of vintage, and that is like, it seems like I've talked about it before. The kind of collecting community within wrestling is starting to go to this switch of, I want what no one else has, as opposed to, I want the commodity cards that, like the 85 Topps Hogan, or I still think the 82 All Stars is the best, of course.
It is.
But there's people that are sick of it. They don't want anything to do with that. They're like, hey, I want the modern shiny stuff. I want the 1 of 1. I want the out of 5. I want the out of 10. Or in the indie stuff, they're not maybe that limited, but they're a lot harder to find than some of this other stuff that a lot of people are like putting up on a pedestal. So why do you think that kind of shift has changed? Have you seen that? What's your thoughts?
I think the release of all the Prism and all that has really created a whole new market for people. Like you said, the 1 of 1s. I see the big time guys get, they get that 1 of 1, which is awesome, because that's like me looking at like the MJF Limitless or like the Macho Man Action Pack. I feel like it's the chase of having, hey, I got the only one.
Mm-hmm.
It is strange though, because you could go so many different directions with this modern, like the AEW cards. Even I bought a box of those, and I was like, they're cool, but I'd rather have the independent cards of the wrestlers, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And there's always these battles of the shiny's better than the old or this, and it's definitely been the last year's been. I've seen a lot more. I don't want to say like animosity, but you could just tell, like from 2 years ago, when everyone was sort of like collecting together, and they're like, hey, this is great, and now there's almost like a battle of new versus old. And I just say, if it makes you happy in your collection, you open up and look through your top loaders. I'm like, hey, that's cool. You don't need to really impress anybody else about it.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting that it seems like for the longest time we were, like you showed that the Ultimate Warrior card, like people were like, oh, I'm gonna go get some of the rare stuff from that set, or I'm gonna find some of the weird obscure stuff from the 80s, or maybe a little bit of the 90s. But it seems like a lot of people I know, like they may have that stuff, and it could be what you said, the chase. Like now, like, okay, well, I have that stuff now. Now I'm going to go get the, I want a rainbow, a Macho Man. I want the Hulk Hogan golds. I want even some of like the Leaf stuff, or some of the obscure like upper deck stuff that has Hogan on it. Like people are going after the rare and scarce stuff of that, instead of going after the Rock, trivia card, or the Rock Bumblebee. And it's weird. Like I can see both sides of it, but it's just interesting to see how things have changed with that.
I agree. Remember, Rock, that stuff was the comic images, I have the trivia card. I have all those. I can't believe no one even talks about those anymore.
Yeah.
They're just like, even the Bumblebee card, which I love, and you can pick those up now because I watch them. I'm like,
now's the time to buy those.
Now's the time to buy them. I've been watching that, and I'm like, well, it's time to get that, because before, people were showing that thing off. It was I don't know how much it got up to, but it was tens of thousands of dollars a PSA 10.
Yeah, and now as of today, the time of recording, we're looking at a Prism Gold Rock that's like right around the $10,000 to $12,000 range, and still going at the time of recording. So,
and I just don't. I'll buy the new modern packs. I'll open it and be like, this is cool, but I don't have the same feeling I do have of these older cards. I just love them. It's just, they make me happy. The nostalgia to me is more than the 1 of 1 or the 1 of 5. It's awesome, and would I like to have them? Yes, but when I pull like this stuff out, I'm just like, man, this is my childhood. And
that goes back to your bike analogy that you talked about when we started. Like that's your childhood bike that you used to ride to the store, and that is more important to you than maybe the best bike that's worth the most amount of money. So you could use that same analogy into cards, and it's just interesting. You keep talking about ripping packs. Do you rip a lot of wax? Are you kind of a 50-50 singles wax? Like what's your kind of take on that?
Like the other day, I bought an AEW blaster at Target. I ripped that. When AEW came out, I bought a hobby box. I ripped that. I'll buy WWE, but I don't pre-order. I don't buy like cases and rip packs. I have a lot of like newer WWE stuff, and it just sits. I don't ever go back and look at it really. I'm sure one day I'll just post it and be like, here, take it. And because I like the refractors are so cool. Like I like when I see that, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't resonate with me as much as ripping. Like I went the other day to the store, my local card shop, and bought a bunch of 80s wax and junk wax, and just sat here and opened up and pulled like a Bo Jackson Superstars 87
Awesome.
tops. That was cool. It was $1, but that resonated with me because I've done that in the past before when I was
That
a little
same
kid.
feeling you got when you were a kid, same process.
Yeah, it's the same as holding the 85 tops Hogan. I remember opening like packs of that, and to me, that's the best part of the collecting. And I don't, and I never put someone down for collecting something because if it makes them happy, I think that's great.
Well, that's an interesting way. I think you're the first person I've ever heard say that approach for wax is like it's entertainment, but it's also more so the nostalgia and the feeling you used to get as opposed to trying to find that big hit or trying to build sets out of the box, something like that.
Right.
So transition over to the wrestling card community. It's been something else as a collector your whole life. Like how has like once you started interacting with people on Twitter and we started seeing more people start collecting, like
Right.
how's that been for you?
So one word to describe the wrestling card community, I would say, is generous. They are the most people. If you need a card or if you're short on something, like when doing this Limitless set, so many people have sent me a message, said, "Hey, I got this card, I'll send it to you." Or if I had one, I'd send it to them. And you don't even think twice about it.
And that's
You're
saying
not.
something for that set as rare and as expensive as some of that stuff is.
It has been. I've met so many wonderful people, and you can't thank them enough. And that's why if someone needs something, I have no problem saying, "Hey, here it is." I mean, I could go down a whole list of names, which I won't, but generous is great. I mean, not everyone is generous, but I've had so much help in completing that, and I don't know when this will air, but when I get the cards in hand, which should be in about 5 days, I'll make a post and say I'm a completist again. And I'm gonna thank everyone that helped me do that.
Awesome. Can't wait to see that post. And maybe, who knows, maybe your post of that, like someone sees that and said, I didn't know they had these cards. Now I got to go find it. And you got a new collector
Right.
on your hands of that thing. And, you know, maybe they sell their 85 tops or maybe they sell their Prism Golds and then go after it's a weird thing. But you touched on earlier kind of how a little bit of the change in the community has gone in 2022.
Yep.
And I just, one thing that actually spawned this interview, and we're both here, and I'll just say it is, I hate when I say I hate. I've never understood when people reply to someone else's post with a picture of their card. I'm like, just let these people have the glory. Tell them how awesome it is. Tell a story about, oh yeah, I remember seeing him in the Omni in '86 or whatever. And we got a discussion going about that. And I wanted to that's one thing I wanted to bring up is here we have two guys that maybe, I don't know whether you disagreed with me or not, and that's fine if you did or didn't, but I disagreed with something you did, and here we are having a conversation about it. And I think that's something that I would like to see changing within the community. Like, we don't have to all collect the same things, as you've said. Everybody can do what they want, but the fact that we can get together and have a conversation about this is, refreshing for me.
Well, when you sent me the message, I didn't take it like anger. I looked at it a different way. You posted, I believe it was the market scenes, or no, it was the market.
It was the same card. We were just like, falling over each other for.
You actually posted that. I got excited because not many people do. I went into my cards, which I haven't looked at those in a while, and it wasn't. And I guess you looked at it, and it's funny how we both look at it different. I looked at it like, this is awesome. You made me go look at those cards. You have them. I mean, there's a few collectors that do, not a lot. I mean, a lot of the old time collectors do, but a lot of new collectors don't get these. To me, they're awesome. New Zealand, you couldn't get them. So I was more excited, like, wow, you made me get off the couch, look at the cards. So that wasn't like me saying, look what I got. And I see how and that's why it's not, I didn't take it like, oh, wow, this guy's being a real mean to me. I just said, wow, it's interesting to think of that view. I just thought it was almost like, I've noticed in wrestling, people like to share what they have together, especially stuff like that. So
yeah, and maybe that's something I've got to understand more. Which actually, I talked about it on a podcast or video or something, and somebody reached out to me and they're like, the reason why some people do this is because it's like they're part of a club or part of a group.
Right.
And I'm like, you know what? I understand that now. I think probably what irritates me is when, say you post your raw copy and then somebody replies with a PSA 10. And then
Right.
somebody replies with a PSA 10 auto. And it's like, oh, look, I'm bigger and
Right.
better. And I think that's my angle that I'm coming at this at. So, but what you say, that makes a lot more sense to me. And I will have to take that into consideration going forward.
So as you get, I guess my theme is nostalgia. You made me think, wow, I've got those cards. I haven't looked at them in 6 months. I'm going to pull them out of the case, show them, and say, wow, this is cool. You have them too. So it was not, and I see how people, like, even if people post like the Limis cards, I post it, but it's such a small group with that. You almost, it's almost like you want people to see it and be like, wow, other collectors have it. So yeah, I'm glad we discussed it though, because I could see how it could be taken the wrong way, and people do one up and they're proud of their stuff. But it was more just, hey, thanks for making me pull these out of the collection and look at them.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. That this conversation is what needs to happen instead of, some of the nonsense that goes on within the community on Twitter or Instagram or wherever else it is, and
Right.
all the infighting. Like, just have a conversation about disagreements, and maybe some people start looking at things a little bit different. But kind of transitioning out of that, we just kicked off a new year. What are kind of your hobby goals for 2023? Is there new PCs you're starting? Is there sets you're trying to finish? Obviously, we just talked about one.
Yeah.
What's kind of your plan for this upcoming year?
So I want to finish the ECW set. I'm pretty close to that.
Now, are you talking about like the stuff I'm doing with the action figures or the Japanese stuff?
No, I only have one of the Japanese cards.
Okay.
I have Taz, which I'd love to. To me, that's one of the coolest style cards there is. But I'm talking about the action figures. Like
Speaking of
3 years
that, I gotta search something right here while we're talking about it so I can remember the name. Have you seen the 1996 Choice ECW cards?
I have. I don't. If I see it, maybe, but don't know it off name.
They're so hard to find. There's a Beulah. I've seen a Francine. I've seen a. Oh man, there's like 2 others I've seen, and they're so hard to find. But that's why we need, like, we're getting to the point where when you used to talk about ECW, it was just the action figures, but now there's all these other things that we're starting to uncover. So, sorry, go ahead.
That's bringing that up. It's interesting because you think you're just getting ECW and you got the action figure cards and you got the Japanese cards, and then you get that. So then you're like, wow, now I got to get that. And those things hold their value pretty well because they're not around. So I think right now is a better time to buy because a lot have been sitting out there. I probably need 10 more, I think, to finish. Just a cool set. I used to watch ECW. It was sweet. I'm trying to think what else. The Rock Bumblebee I do want.
Yep. I would like to have one of those too. I'm just the lowest grade, cheapest I could find.
Randomly, not wrestling related, and I'm going to probably post it in a little bit. I went to a card show, and I will say this for wrestling card collectors. There were so many wrestling cards there, more than I've ever seen. And I'm talking boxes, and a lot of it was newer, but there was 85 tops. There was, some 2002 Fleer. So that's a lot more than I've seen in the last year or two.
100%.
So I was very excited about that. A lot of packs. And then I talked with a lot of people because there's not many people that go, hey, I'm a wrestling card collector. There just isn't. They're like, well, you do. And then I think in the wrestling card community, we have such great collections of things. I think everybody does. There's a lot of,
no matter what your niche is, like there's so many great collections.
There's awesome stuff. Everyone has it. So people are like, oh, you have this, and I couldn't be like, oh, I collect Limitless. No one even know, and most people don't even know what that is unless you're, really on Twitter or things like that. But, you talk about an 85 Tops Hogan, you go, oh, I got an 82 Wrestling All-Stars Hogan. They're like, wow, that was great to see it more mainstream at the card shows. People always price it weird. Though. They think 1990 Classics a $15, $20 card. It's funny how that works too.
Yeah, I went to a card show not too long ago, and that my experience was that too. Like, do you have wrestling cards? They were like, yeah, we've got this, and this, or no, I don't have anything with me, but I'd have some at the shop or at my house. It was a different kind of vibe now instead of the, kind of the scowl that we used to get, like, oh, wrestling.
It was.
Why is anybody collecting that?
Guy was wearing an NWO shirt. I walked up to him, said, just too sweet. And,
awesome.
Was like, and I showed him like, my Hogan signatures and just saying, look how cool. And he's like, well, and then he's talking about his Hogan. It was just cool to get that banter going.
Real quick, since we touched on that, do you think we're finally like? I think this past year was huge. Do you think wrestling cards are finally up a level to the mainstream hobby as far as like we're never going to be the big three sports, but do you think we're getting into that? Pokemon, UFC, F1. Do you think we're getting in that realm now with the mainstream?
I definitely do. I think you see a lot more larger collectors buying cards. You see like Matt Cardona's buying PSAs and posting them, which he was an action figure, collector. The 82 Hogan, I feel, has been on some big auctions, so you see that. The Rock, who's the biggest movie star in the world, of course, his stuff. People are always going to want that. They're gonna be like, "Wow, what's
Right.
his card?" Then they're going to go down a rabbit hole and realize, "Oh, it's not the trivia card. It's this, and this," and that's sort of what gets you going down those different avenues,
Yep.
because you think it's that simple. That's why another reason I don't really get into the newer cards, because there's 50 of one guy in 1 year. Hey, I know in 1982 there's 3, or 1985 there's 1. You just have it, and I sort of like that. It's not as overwhelming to collect, 50
And I
of
think
one.
that just is the style of collecting because, like, as a carrying cross super collector, when I see
Right.
his stuff come out, like, I'm all about it, and I don't care as much about the peripheral. But again, that's the same. It's the same focus you're talking about, but it's just different, and that's
How
okay.
cool is it? You collect him and he likes your post and stuff like
Yeah.
that. To me is cool.
When are you going to get that in sports cards? Like,
You're not going to get that in sports.
yeah,
You're not getting it in sports cards. They don't even pay attention to that. But when he knows you're a super collector, and I think, to me, that's the cool part about the wrestling community. And you're almost like, you talk to like guys like the owner of Limitless will message me and be like, "That's awesome." I've had wrestlers from them say, "I can't believe you have the whole collection." That to me is really cool.
yeah,
That's something you're not getting with collecting NFL cards or stuff, which I
well,
do love.
yeah,
But you're not getting that same little small community feel.
yeah, and like the weird circle you talked about, like me being able to buy my entire 82, 83 set off Matt Cardona, like. In what world does
Right.
that happen in sports? Like, yeah, I bought Joe Montana's personal collection of all of his stuff. Like, it's not going to happen,
I mean,
So
it's so cool. Like, to me, that's a great story. I have to tell this funny story about a Hulk Hogan autograph. It's too hard to put on Twitter, but last year at the National, I promised my buddy I would do this. I got the rest of the superstars, the New Zealand card signed. He went
that
with
card.
Me. Got the picture of him signing it, and I got the Ric Flair. So that was awesome. He sent me
my
pictures.
favorite cards you just showed.
Right. This one too.
Yep.
So he gets the card. He's in Chicago. He sends me a picture of it and goes, "Here's your card. It's beautiful." The next day, he sends me, this is great. It's crazy, but great. He sends me a picture of my card chewed up. And his dog ate my Hulk Hogan autographed card. He had it out on the coffee table. And he felt horrible. And I was like, wow, because these cards aren't around that much either. Like, you don't see too many, especially in good shape. So he happened to have an extra one. And he contacted Hulk Hogan's manager, told him what happened. And Hulk Hogan's manager actually said, "Well, if you buy this, I'll send you that card signed. We'll do it." So I did get it back. But I just wanted to say, how many times does a dog actually eat a Hulk Hogan autographed card from New Zealand?
I would want that card. I would want the chewed up version back.
It's still around. I have a picture. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
He has it. I said, "You keep it as a memento." It's in a clamshell container.
That's awesome. That goes back to your bike analogy, going full circle here as we kind of close this out, is these moments that these cards can represent. And a chewed up Hogan, like, I know there was like a half of a Honus Wagner card that sold like not too long ago. Like, do we see that with this chewed up Hogan down the road? Who knows? But as we kind of close out, what is something advice, something that's helped you, something for just the bigger wrestling card community? What's something you would put out there for them as we kind of close this out?
I would say collect what you like. Don't worry about what other people like, because everyone has different niches.
How much have we just talked about the difference between me and you today?
Right, exactly. But we're all collecting for fun, and we all like wrestling. That's the one thing I always say. We all love wrestling. Some people love old wrestling and they despise the new wrestling. Some people love both, like myself. I watch every Wednesday night. Yep. I keep track of what's going on. I say, it's great if you want to. People are in it to sell cards. People are in it to just collect them. Again, I don't sell many cards. I just like to keep them. I'm trying to think of a great way to display all of them and just to look at them. I don't know. I just do it, and if it makes you happy, then just enjoy it. And if it's shiny, if it's old, if it's independent,
Chewed up.
yeah, if it's exactly chewed up, just I don't know. Just be happy you have it.
All right, let everybody know where they can find you so they can join in on the conversation.
At M Dalakas on Twitter. I traveled a lot for work this year, so I really didn't have a lot of time to post. But this year should be better. I'm going to be more posting more things. I won't post any of the same cards that you post. So don't.
Well, at least we understand the angles that we're going at now. So when if I see you do that again, it's going to make sense.
It's nostalgia only, not a flex.
Right.
I mean it, but it's just I do love when people flex Wrestling Card Wednesday and stuff. I feel like that's not big enough right now. I would like to see that get started up again too, because then you just post something random in your collection, even if it's a $10 card or a $1,000 card.
Right.
People see it and go, wow. And I think it helps the hobby keep going down and collecting different things.
100%. Thanks for coming by. Thank you guys for watching. Matt, again, thanks for your time. I know this was both of our ends of scheduling was interesting. So thank you guys for watching.
Thank you.
Thanks to Matt again for coming on the show today and giving the community his time and his perspective on wrestling card. And let this interview be a lesson to the wrestling card community or pretty much any collecting community. We both spoke about how my part of a disagreement led to actually him coming on this show and the tweets that we went back and forth about. It's an example of how differing opinions and different viewpoints can actually come together for a better understanding of someone's approach and the hobby. Make sure to give Matt a follow on all social platforms. And if you enjoyed his time on this show today, let him know about it. Let him know that he brought some value to this channel for your viewing pleasure. And before you get out of here, make sure to check the links in the show notes for all of the ways you can help show your support for my content. There's the podcast I'm a part of, eBay store, Wrestling with Cards Patreon community, and much more. Just check it out before you get out of here. And until next time, click the videos on the screen for more great wrestling card content. We'll see you there.